T-minus 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5. All three engines up and burning. 2, 1, 0, and lift off.
Coach on Fire Radio.
Hi, and welcome to another edition of your Journey to Success podcast. I'm your host, Kenny Weiss. I'm a life coach, speaker, and author here based in Phoenix. The goal here each week is to create a movement of people who are passionate about learning and growing and wanting real answers. They want more than the superficial buzzwords that are so prevalent in this industry. They want to go deeper. For instance, are you in a career or a relationship that you feel stuck in and just don't know how to leave? Well, let's talk about that tonight. Now, if you want to call in, this is a live call-in show. It's very simple. Just call me on Skype. All you have to do is, whether you want to pick audio or video, doesn't matter. If you pick the video portion, you won't show up. So if you want to remain anonymous, nobody will see you. If you make that, mistake, I will see you, but that's it. No one watching on Facebook will notice your picture. You just look for my name, Kenny Weiss, on Skype, and just select call and call me in. You don't have to stick to the topic that we're talking about tonight. You can pick anything you want. And if I'm talking with somebody already, just send a little message on Facebook. Add me as a friend on Facebook if we're not already. My name's Kenny Weiss again. And but let me know you're waiting and that you have a call. And so as soon as I can wrap up with whoever I'm talking to, then I'll let you know, and so you can call in. So again, pick any topic you like. But tonight I wanted to focus on, are you in a career or a relationship that's not working for you? And I've talked about relationship stuff in the past. And so tonight, at least in the beginning, I wanted to start on careers. Gallup over the last couple of years has done polls every year, and they found only 7% of the whole population is completely fulfilled at work. In other words, everyone's miserable in their jobs. I love how Tony Robbins explains it. It's kind of how most people live their life, but also how they pick their career. They just sort of hop in an inner tube, bounce down the river, bouncing off rocks, and go, oh, I'm a lawyer, I'm a dentist, I'm in sales. They just sort of end up there. There's no real thought or plan. And even in a scenario like that, what I've discovered is the reason we're dissatisfied in our careers is we are reliving the trauma that we all went through. It's true. I know by the career that you're in what your childhood was like and what you're trying to escape. For instance, if you're an engineer, the reason you're an engineer is, for whatever reason, emotions were not okay to express. So you pick something that's purely analytical, that's numbers-based, that's theory-driven, that has structure, but there's an attempt. I mean, everything we do has emotion in it, but there's an attempt to avoid emotion. My dad, the fascinating thing about my dad is he became an engineer, but as I watched him die, I realized my dad was gifted, absolutely gifted emotionally. But see, he had a father who, in a sense, did what I did. He taught the whole Dale Carnegie, win friends and influence people, yet he beat my dad. There was this dichotomy. It didn't make sense. And so my dad was like anti-psychology, anti-personal growth, anti-anything emotional. Didn't believe any of it. Well, why would he? Look at his experience. So because of the trauma he went through, he picked a career to try and avoid that. Now, like I said, as I watched him die, I realized, my God, we had this man pegged wrong all of our life. He was gifted emotionally. He just never walked into it. He never walked in it. He never walked in his gift. And that's what most of us, the reason we're unsatisfied in our careers is we're not walking in our gift. Let's take another one, like people in the helping professions, people like myself, whether it's nurses, massage therapists, anything like that. Well, we were made to take care of our parents or grandparents, whoever our caregivers were. Our primary role growing up was to take care of them. So what do we do now? We take care of people. It's the same thing. I've noticed realtors. What's the common bond with realtors? Well, there was some sort of instability at home, whether they moved around a lot, maybe they were an army brat, or they moved at an influential time in their childhood. There was some sort of chaos and instability at home growing up. And so look at the whole buying and selling process of real estate. It's completely chaotic. You never know what's going on. They're just reliving the trauma they went through, trying to reconcile it. Salespeople, especially high pressure sales like medical sales or car sales, things like that, where every day you basically start at zero. Well, people in those type of professions were either told directly or indirectly that they had no worth. And so think of it, every single day, they start the day with no worth. They have to sell all day long. And if they sell something, now they have worth. But again, they start the day over at zero. They go right back to that same feeling, even if it's a 30-month process. But people in sales tells me what their childhood was like. Financial planners. There was either a lack of money or an issue, a loss around money. I know a lot of them, parents or relatives. One family member died, didn't leave the spouse any money. The spouse fell into hard times, Skid Row, all those kinds of things. And so they want to stop that from happening. So there were always issues around money. So they're trying to reconcile money issues for other people. People that are cops, military, firefighters. These people were definitely stripped of their self-worth. And so now they're wearing a uniform like a superhero because they were made to feel so small. And none of this is to disparage people. That's not the point. It doesn't mean that the careers we picked are bad. It might be the resolution to what we went through. But the fact that only 7% of the population is fully in love with their job is proof that most people have picked it to relive the trauma and abuse that they suffered. As I talk about all of this in my book, Your Journey to Success. Are you a hostage or a hero to your career? Almost all of us are a hostage to our career. I know I was to all of mine. I'll get into more of that here in a little bit of how it's kind of how I figured all of this out. But so anybody in police and firefighter, those, where they put on a uniform, that's a uniform of power and strength. Well, they were stripped of it. And so that's why they wear it. Now, like for myself, here's what I had to realize. I grew up, thought I was an athlete, thought that's all I wanted to do. I played pro hockey, pro golf. Well, I realized there were a couple reasons that I played it. One of them, with hockey was I had an older brother who'd beat the heck out of me. And we'd play street hockey. And he was 4 years older. There's nothing I could do. So he'd say, get in the net. And I'd be a goalie. Well, I realized really quickly, if I stopped him, it would piss him off. It was the only way I could beat up my brother, was to play goalie and stop him. The other thing was, talk about self-abuse. I played forward the first 2 years when I was 6 and 7 years old. And then when I turned 8, I told my dad I wanted to be a goalie after a couple of years of taking my brother's slap shots. And he said, fine, but you can only do it if you can carry the bag to the rink. Well, I'm 8 years old. If you've ever seen goalie equipment, the bag was almost as tall as I was. The rink was 8 blocks away. No matter the weather, he'd make me carry it. And that's what we do is I'll show you, because when we abuse ourselves, at least we're choosing it. It gives us power. See, with my brother, I was powerless. I couldn't stop him. So I picked a position where I could get my power back. I'd stand in front of pucks, hard pucks or frozen tennis balls, suffer welts and all of this self-abuse. But at least I chose it. See, I was suffering trauma at the hands of my brother. So now I chose to abuse myself to get my power back, but at least I chose it. And that's why everyone in all these careers, everyone's miserable, because they've chosen careers to re-abuse themselves, but at least they chose it so they feel empowered. because as a kid, they had no power. And so that's why we do this. And I lay that self-abusive process out in my book. I won't get into all of that. So that was one of the reasons I played, was to get back at my brother. Another reason I played was my father. He was very angry, because of the abuse he suffered. My parents were very young, 16, 18 when they got married, 4 kids by 21 and 23. He never had a chance to process out what he had been through. So I became his dumping ground for anger. All right. I would sit and listen to it. I had, in a sense, no choice. Well, look at the 2 sports I played, hockey and golf. I was a goalie in golf, or a goalie in hockey. Who's to blame if I let in a goal? Me. Who's to blame if I hit a bad shot? Me. Who could I get angry at? Me. Right? I found 2 sports where I could take that anger and turn it back on myself and get out of it. All right? It gave me a sense of power to release that anger, but I was releasing it on myself. I was self-victimizing. It's what we all do. It's the 3rd stage of the cycle I talk about in my book. The final reason that I picked these sports is because I could always feel and read things emotionally in people. The second I would open my mouth in my family, everyone would shut me down. It was like I was ostracized because I just saw the world differently. Well, look at the 2 careers I picked. Hockey, I was a goalie. What's a goalie do? They're completely isolated, left alone, out on an island. They don't even sit on the bench with the rest of the team. Well, that's just like what I experienced growing up. What about golf? You're in between the ropes. Nobody talks to you. It's the exact same condition that I felt as a kid. Look at what I do now. See, my experience now is still the same. I spend most of my time, just like I did as a kid, listening to people, especially in my office with coaching. I'm listening to them and trying to understand what's going on with them, just like it was with my parents. When I speak, I'm standing on a stage. I'm separated. There's a distance between me and everybody else, just like hockey, just like golf, just like childhood. The difference is I finally figured out how to reconcile my trauma and my career. This is the first career where people listen to me. I actually get paid for people to listen to me. For the first time, it's also the first career I've chosen. I chose hockey to please my dad. Then I built homes and custom furniture. I chose that because my first wife wanted me to do it. I got back into golf because my second wife wanted me to do that. This is the first career I've ever chosen. And I've learned that the trauma that I went through, these are the characteristics. Remember what I said, in helping professions, we're drawn to this because that was our role growing up. But most of us are doing it and not getting our needs fulfilled. For the first time in my life, it's working for me, not against me. So one of the keys to look at is, how is my career matching up with the emotional conditions that I went through as a kid? Did you feel neglected? What if you're miserable at work and you want to do something new? Why? What are you feeling about that? Now, anyone listening, if you want to call in and talk about that, just call me on Skype. It's really simple. Just go to Skype, look for Kenny Weiss. If you want to remain anonymous, create an anonymous profile. Nobody sees your face on Facebook or any of that. But if you're struggling with a career that you're not quite sure how to get out of, but you're miserable, give me a call. Or if you want to just type in stuff here on Facebook, if you have questions, go ahead and do that. So the key to figuring out your career is, what is the emotional condition that this job gives me? Whether it's positive or negative. If it's negative, how does this remind me of the things I went through as a kid? And then you'll be able to start realizing why you chose this profession. And so what are the consistent emotional reactions you have? Now, most people are completely detached from their emotions. So if you don't know, then what I'd suggest you do is just go on Google, type in feelings list, okay? And pull up both positive, and you'll see thousands of lists will come up. Find a list that has equal positive and negative feelings. Keep that with you. Trigger, pay attention throughout the day. I suggest 4 or 5 times a day, like 8 a.m., 10 a.m., noon, 2, 5, and somewhere before you go to bed. Check in, see what's happened within that window. Anything happened that triggered an emotion, what was it? And then what was going on beforehand, so that you can start figuring out what the emotional condition is of your career. Hi, Lisa. Thanks for saying hi. Alina, is it Edita? I'm not quite sure how to say that. Thanks, you guys, for tuning in and watching. So the first step is figuring out what's going on emotionally during the course of your workday, and both positive and negative. Especially if you're unfulfilled, what are the negative feelings? Then you can start looking back at childhood and some of your experiences, and you'll start to make correlations as to, oh my God, this is what I went through as a kid, and now I know why I'm in this position. Now I know why I'm not fulfilled, because I'm reliving. Usually it's a sense of powerlessness that everybody's chasing. They've picked a career that makes them feel powerless and frustrated. A perfect example, when I was writing my book, I hired a ghostwriter originally to help me write the book, but found out really quickly, because the things I talk about, there isn't anyone in this industry talking about. They go much deeper. And she couldn't write the book, and she's worked for some of the heaviest hitters in the self-help industry. And it triggered her. She saw a lot of herself, that because what I talk about allows you, it's a self-awareness process, and she wasn't aware of all these things operating in her life. And so when we got to this chapter, she asked questions, and she goes, well, why do you think I'm a ghostwriter? And, a lot of times people ask me questions like that. And I'm like, do you really want to know? Because we haven't been taught how to be self-aware, sometimes it can be a bit of a shock when we discover these things about ourselves. It can be hard to take. And she assured me it was okay. And I said, well, think about it. What does a ghostwriter do? What do? They write everybody else's stories, right? Well, what's that tell you? Growing up, she was never allowed to live her own life. She was never allowed to live and create her own story. Her whole role in life was to be there for parents, siblings, other people. She wasn't allowed to express herself. And so now she's reliving that. And it was, I don't know if I'd say funny. It was maybe heartbreaking, but the look on her face when, I said that, she just went white. And you could see the realization of, for the first time in her life, she'd never made the connection as to why she'd chosen that profession and how profound it was, that it tied in exactly with her life. It was very difficult for her to see that. Now, obviously, in the beginning, it's difficult, but that's where freedom is. The only freedom we get in life is self-discovery. When we realize all these imperfect things about ourselves, that's when we get freedom. And we've all been taught to avoid it, and that's what kills us all. But when you realize how imperfect you are, then you actually have a chance to reconcile it. So another perfect example was a client of mine. He came in, he started seeing me because he's like, I know I'm capable of more. I know that I have this ability and this desire to help a lot of people and to change the world. Those were his words. I want to change the world. And listen, people, it's so fascinating how we haven't been taught to listen to ourselves. And when you learn how to, you realize how much almost everything we talk about, even when talking to somebody else, we're just talking about ourselves and we have the answer. But anyway, he was telling me about his situation and his childhood. We got into that, how his dad was very controlling, and his dad never said he'd amount to anything. His dad grew up in terrible poverty, horrific poverty. And so his goal was to protect his son from having hopes and dreams and having them crushed. And what he ended up doing was trying to mitigate those by telling him nothing will work out. He thought that would be loving and caring. And as we discussed what he did for a career, he had a mobile tire changing service. Hey, Rosemary, good to see you. Thanks for tuning in. If you have a question or anything, just call me on Skype. You can, you'll remain anonymous if you want. And just look for Kenny Weiss and just call me either audio or video call. Your video won't show up, but the audio will. And so if any of this or any other topic you want to talk about, go ahead and give me a call. So he felt completely unfulfilled in his job. He's like, all I do is go change people's tires. And one day he came in for his appointment. He was particularly upset and just fed up. He's like, I just don't do anything with my life, and this is a complete waste of time. I want to get into something where I really help people, where I really make a difference. And I was like, well, what happened today? And he said, well, I got this one call, and these people, they were heading out of town, and they had a family vacation or a family reunion they were going to. And the trailer to everything they were hauling, the tire went flat. Well, I guess it's some special tire. They'd been calling around. No one had the tire. They're stuck on the side of the road trying to get out of town. Well, he happened to have that tire. It took a long time. He had to make a special trip, do all of this stuff, several hours. But he got the tire, put it in, and he said, these people are just crying and like, thank you so much. You have no idea how much this means to me. He's like, it's just stupid. All I did was change their tire. Like, I can't believe it. And they're all happy and excited just because I changed their tire. And he said, and then I went from that to this lady's house. She was very old, much older lady, and she kind of had somewhat of a similar difficulty. She had a tire with really special lug nuts, and she couldn't find anybody with the specific wrench to take the lug nuts off so that they could change the tire. And the car had been sitting there for, I can't remember if it was a month or 2 months, but quite a long time. And he happened to have that wrench. And so he's out there changing the tire, and he's describing how the granddaughter was there. And the granddaughter started jumping up and down and going, Grandma, does this mean we'll get the tire fixed? Does this mean I don't have to walk to school anymore? Does this mean we can finally go get ice cream? And she's assured, she's like, yes, honey, that's what's going to happen. And so he went on and on about how horrible this was and how he wasn't doing anything. And I turned to him and I said, David, do you realize what you just said? And he kind of went numb and blank, and he's like, no, I don't know what you're talking about. And I said, do you realize what you did for these people? Do you remember what you came in here asking that you wanted to do in your life? And he paused and thought, and I said, think about when you walked in here, what you said you wanted to do with your life. And he paused and he said, well, I want to change people's lives. And I said, that's right. And focus on the first word. What's the first word? And he said, change. And I said, and what do you do for a living? And he paused and he thought, and he couldn't. I said, think about it. What do you do for a living? And he's like, I just change tires. I'm like, whoa, whoa, whoa. What did you just say? I changed tires. Yes. What did you just say? What's the first word? Change. Yeah. And what happens when you change tires? What did you do in these two people's lives? Do you realize the impact you had on them? And he kind of stared off and he kind of started crying. He didn't realize that by changing tires, I mean, look at the impact on these two people's lives. One got to go to, a long, they planned for years this family vacation and family reunion. And he was a major part of that. And this little girl getting a ride to school and getting ice cream and grandma being able to drive and them no longer having to walk everywhere they went. And I was like, Your slogan, you should change it. I don't change tires. I change lives. Because that's what you do. And I said, but remember the way you grew up. What was the message that was sent to you? Do you remember what your father said? Because he would talk to me about how his father could never understand why he did what he did and why people would want his service. And because he got sent that message that he wasn't enough, that he couldn't be enough, that there was, he was never capable of more. He picked a belief system to always mitigate what it was he was doing. He didn't even realize that he had already accomplished his goal. Now, we went on, and obviously he realized there are other ways he wants to change people's lives. But his whole idea around why he was doing this job and what it was for completely shifted. So I tell you that story so you can look at your career. What words are you using to describe it? What is it you're after? And how do those words correlate? See, he wanted to change his own life. He wanted to change the belief system that his father gave him. It was all about change. His whole life was change. He didn't realize the power of that one sort of sentence and word when he walked in the door. And unfortunately, we haven't been taught how to listen to things like this. That's what's so fascinating in an idle conversation. When I'm standing at a networking meeting and somebody says, yeah, I changed tires. You just told me so much about yourself. I don't even need to know your childhood, And when you learn to listen this way, like there's a speech I give and then things in my book where I talk about, so you can learn to hear this. You not only understand other people, you understand yourself, because you start realizing the words I'm picking. I'm not talking, we're really never talking to somebody else. We're always just talking to ourselves, trying to get ourselves to hear it. But we haven't been taught that that's what we're doing. So this man walked in trying to understand himself, yet he already understood it. He just couldn't hear it. And that's really all I did, was give him the ability to hear himself and what he really wanted to do. So if anyone listening, if you have a question about your career, about your relationships, addictions, trauma, anything going on in your life, go ahead. If you don't want to call me on Skype, that's one option. Call me on Skype and just look for Kenny Weiss, and you can be anonymous if you like. Give me a call. I'm happy to talk about any subject you have. If you want to just type something in here on Facebook or through Spreaker, if you have a certain question, by all means, I'm happy to talk about anything that's going on in your life, anything that might resonate for you or give you some help. So that's a little bit about careers. Look in your life for the emotional condition. Now, generally what happens is the people that are most satisfied in their careers, the reason they're satisfied is because it's expressing their trauma in a way that works for them, not against them. It's like athletes. I find it fascinating. Every athlete thinks they love the sport, but listen to how they describe it. All they describe is what it feels like to hit somebody. Well, that just tells me what they're trying to expel is the anger, the pain and trauma of what they've gone through in childhood. And that's why so many athletes have a hard time outside of sports, is just like me. They're playing sports to exercise the trauma they went through, but they don't really want to play sports. Most athletes have, I don't care who it is, they don't want to play the sport. They're trying to exercise, because we store every bit of trauma we ever have, we store it in our body. That's why people work out, yoga. Some of the most effective treatments of people who in trauma or illness or disease is any sort of body work, massage, what is the needles? Acupressure or acupuncture, yoga, working out, anything that's physical, because we're releasing that trauma. Hey, Janice, how are you? If you have a question, about anything, type it in or give me a call on Skype. I know you've sent me stuff in the past. If there's something since we've last talked, by all means, let me know. I'd be happy to address it for you. But all we're ever doing is exercising that trauma. So if you're miserable in your career, look for the trauma you went through in your life. If you're willing to address that, you're going to find a career that's rewarding because, like I told you with my story, all my life I was using my trauma against me, and that's why only 7% of the population is happy with their job, because almost all of us are reliving our trauma and using it against us, and that's why we're miserable in our careers. So look at the difficulties you've been through in your life, and how can you become an expert in that and use that to help yourself. Because when you learn how to help yourself, then you have the skills and the knowledge to help others. Like, once I became an expert in me and my issues, it allowed me to be an expert in everybody else's. But I had to start in my own issues first. And that's one of the greatest mistakes I see counselors, coaches, everybody do, is they've been through this horrific experience. They don't want anyone else to go through it. And so they try and fix you first. Well, until they fix themselves, all they do is pass it back on. They haven't reconciled it in themselves. So it's a proxy setup. They're reliving their abuse through you. They're not reconciling theirs or usually helping you reconcile yours. And that can happen quite often. So look in your life, where have you struggled? Where is it working against you? Go become an expert in it, and that will usually lead you down the path of what it is you truly want to do. Okay? Now, the second half of the show, or the question, was, what do I do if I'm in a relationship? I'm stuck. I want to get out, but I can't. Well, there's a lot of area to cover in this. Where does that come from? Well, the first piece we have to start with is how the brain and body work. I'm sure if that's you, if you're stuck in a relationship, you're sitting there talking with all your friends ad nauseum about how you want to leave. Fear of being less than 100%, Lisa asked. Okay, well, I'm going to jump off the relationship thing because Lisa asked a question here. So there's a fear of being less than 100%. Well, the truth is that's basically a fear of failure, okay? And as I talk about this in my book, Your Journey to Success, none of us have feared being less than 100%. None of us have feared failure. It's not humanly possible. What we all fear is success. What we all fear is being 100%. And let me show you. Lisa, I am sure you have laid in bed or sat at your desk or gone for a long drive and considered, I need to do A, B, C, and D, and I'll be at 100%. These are the things, if I did them, they would make me, I'd be able to live at my full capacity, what I know I'm capable of, what I call our greatness, our gift. And in that moment, you recognize these are the steps that I need to take. But what happens? I don't feel like it. More likely than not, you're afraid to do them. Well, you just proved my point. And this is what happens to everybody. We get in that moment. We know what we should do, and we consider it, and we choose not to do it. Well, you just chose failure. You just chose to be less than 100%. You're not scared to death of it all. What we are all scared to death of is the fear of success. Because if we actually went and did those things, we'd get what we wanted. And here's why. Here's the piece no one talks about where all that comes from. I was kind of getting into it with the relationship stuff. The way our brain works is our brain seeks what it knows. It doesn't know right from wrong. You just sat there thinking about what to do right. You know what to do right. That's right and wrong, but your brain won't act on that, okay? What your brain acts on is known versus unknown? Well, since we have a culture that promotes failure and promotes being the victim, because see, here's the other piece to this, Lisa. Think of all you get from not being 100%. Look at the payoff. Look at all the attention you get. Look at how you'll talk with friends, of how you get to feel miserable, you get to be sick and hurt, and everybody comes to your rescue. That's the biggest reason we don't live in our greatness, is because our whole society is based on rewarding the victim. I mean, look at it. That's an easy one. Everybody plays the victim, and what happens when I play the victim? Everybody comes to my rescue. Everybody wants to fix it for me. I get more from being the victim than walking in my greatness. So why would I want to change? That's why in that moment, when we consider the steps it would take to being 100%, we choose not to do it, in part because our brain and body know the feeling of being a victim. Every single choice we ever make is based on feeling, not thought, and that proves it. You've thought about, I should do this and I'll be at 100%, but the feeling is more powerful. Our brain and body seeks what it knows. It looks to repeat it, because even if logically I can say, this won't help me, my body goes, yeah, but I don't know what will happen if I succeed and get all those things. That's an unknown. I don't want that. I can't control that, but I can control being a victim. I can control being less than 100%. I've been doing it all my life. I know exactly what's going to happen. I know the pattern. I know what to expect. My brain and body knows this. So I will choose living at less than 100%. I will choose living less than my greatness, because I don't have a feeling experience of what it's like to live in my greatness. Even more proof. What do we all do when we finally do succeed? What do athletes do? Business people, weddings, everybody. Whenever we succeed, what's the first thing we do? We go get drunk, stoned. We do something to destroy ourselves. We're feeling great. And then we do something that victimizes us and takes that feeling away. We go back down to feeling terrible about ourselves. We repeat failure because our body and brain is addicted to it. It's what my whole book is about, is showing how we're all addicted to that self-victimizing victim behavior, how we reward ourselves, society rewards it, how we choose it, seek it out, love it, because our brain and bodies are addicted to it. I first show how that works, but even more importantly, I show you how to start creating the new chemicals. It's called a neural pathway, so that your brain and body can get addicted to success, to walking in your greatness, to feeling good about yourself, so that when good things happen, you don't destroy yourself. But our brain and bodies don't have that it's basically all it is a chemical addiction. You're choosing to live at less than 100% is a chemical addiction. Your cells send a signal to your brain that want you to relive that. And so my process shows you how to create. This is a better way to explain it. You ever go sledding? Sledding in snow. Well, it's Arizona, so maybe not. But picture 3 feet of fresh powder on a great sledding hill. You get to the top first thing in the morning. You just hop on down and you carve this path. Beautiful path. What do? That was so much fun. You get right back to the top and you do it again. Well, you do that a couple of times. All of a sudden, that powder's gone. You've now sunk down 2 feet, maybe all the way to the bottom. Now, if you decide you want to steer out of it, you can't. That's what happens when you're driving in the car, laying in bed, and you consider living at 100%. You go, nah, I'm stuck in this rut. I don't know what would happen. It's too much work. I don't want to do it, so I'll stay here. So what my book and what everything teaches you is, okay, you just chose to relive the abuse, relive living at less than 100%. You're now at the bottom of the hill. Now, as you walk back up, What are the self-victimizing behaviors we all use? This is a human condition. There isn't a single person listening to this, watching this on this planet that doesn't live their life this way. Nobody is bad. This is a human condition, and I can show anyone and everybody exactly how this is operating in their life. How they get to the bottom of the hill and don't know why they're choosing that same path. So my book and everything I talk, I coach, the greatness group, the movement, the greatness movement, the groups that I run, we walk through this whole process. So you can recognize when you're at the bottom of that, after you've just fired that less than 100% dynamic, and you're walking, you can start to see these are the choices and behaviors I use to set up my self-victimization, to drop into denial that I'm even doing it, to project it onto somebody else and blame them, and keep me once again going down this path. So that's the first piece. It's the awareness process of how you operate what I call the worst day cycle in your life. So you get to learn what that cycle is and how you're operating in it. And then I give you the pathway of, now that you learn that cycle, here are the steps and tools you put in place to drop out of that cycle. Now you're at the top of the hill. You're looking at that same rut you've always been in. You're laying in bed, knowing what steps you need to take. You're in the car for that drive, whatever it is. And for the first time, you can step to the left, fire a new neural pathway, and create a new chemical addiction so that your brain and body is now addicted to living at 100% what I call your greatness. Yes, Marianne, we are meant to shine, but we don't take a single class to teach us how to shine. That's why none of us do. It's not we're bad, but we don't know. We're not bad people, but nobody teaches us. And we all say, oh, I know what to do. I watched my parents. Who taught them? Where'd they learn it? So that's part of why I started all of this, is nobody talks about it, and nobody will go to this level, whether it's Tony Robbins or anyone else. Brilliant work. I've stolen most of their stuff. I just went a step further than where they've gone. That's all. So let's see, Janice. So if I can resolve my trauma or traumas, I could be successful with my goals 100%. It's not just about resolving your traumas, okay? It's possible, yes. I'll be honest with you, probably no. Because here's part of what we're battling in all of this, Janice, is centuries. Remember, DNA, all DNA is emotion that's been fired repeatedly. That's why when you're born and you do this like grandpa, that's just, you picked up his emotion. When you're born, 50% of the emotional condition of your parents is turned on. The other 50% gets turned on by environment, which is usually our parents. That's why we become them. So what you have to realize is this cycle of self-abuse, the worst day cycle of fear, of trauma, fear, shame, denial, and then repeating our own trauma, going into fear, shame, and denial over and over. That is a process that's been stuck in the human DNA for centuries. Like, I already know this. My book, I will never see the transformation in society that it will have. There's going to be a huge shift while I'm alive, but the ultimate shift in society, it will take generations for DNA to shift enough for people to create the chemical addiction in DNA that we stop victimizing ourselves, okay? So I already recognize there's still certain ways I self-victimize myself. I'm not perfect, but that's the beauty. Now I know how I do it, and I've learned the process of forgiveness, so I'm okay with it. I've reconciled that piece. So It's not that I no longer have to be perfect because I understand the science and how all of this works. So the key is, Janice, is to remember this. Because, see, we've all been sold a bill of goods like we're going to arrive somewhere, we're going to succeed, and everything's going to be perfect. It's not possible. Even the success. The American definition, the English language definition of success is opulence, wealth, the accumulation of things, power, status. The Latin root, the original root of the word is succedere. And the definition of succedere is to come close after. So what we did is we took the authentic definition of success, which means to come close after, which means we never arrive. It's always a process. It's progress, not perfection. And we turned it into a destination. Once you get these things, you're a success. That's why everyone who gets those things is miserable, because they're not pursuing succedere. And that's what life is about. So to answer your question, Janice, we will never arrive anywhere. Life is a lifelong process and journey. That's why I picked the name. We don't get there, and we don't need to get there. And so achieving all of our goals, do we need to? I don't know. I guarantee if you ask yourself, what were your goals 30 years ago and what they are now, they're a hell of a lot different. The point is you work the process, new goals, and the ultimate goal emerges. Like, look at me. Look at what I'm doing. With all my addictions and what a train wreck my life is, who would have said this is a goal? My goal was to play pro hockey and pro golf, all that other stuff, but it wasn't my calling. It wasn't my greatness. So what you're trying to answer is the end goal. Who cares? The end goal doesn't matter. What matters is the process. Get into the first part. Look at the cycle. Learn about it. Become an expert in it. The reconciliation comes at the end. Well, there's no end, but comes through the process of learning about all that. And your goals, the number one goal to me in life should be self-awareness. Go find out how absolutely broken you are, and everything else will work out. I'm going to switch out to Lisa. She asks a question. So do we become our own parent? Is it a daily reprieve? Yes, we have to reparent ourselves. It breaks my heart. I hear this all the time. A lot of people go, oh, my childhood was great. My parents were great. That usually tells me the trauma was so severe that I don't want to paintbrush everybody, but most likely the trauma was so severe, they are borderline personality. I'm drawing a blank on the word, differential. In other words, what it is, their coping mechanism to survive the trauma of childhood is they can never look at themselves honestly because they built up such a big wall to survive it. And we've all been through trauma. It's unavoidable. How could we not? Every other profession, every other thing we do in our life, we take a class, right? And even when we take a class, we screw up. Parenting and relationships and emotions are three things we never take a class on. So how could any parent not hurt us? It's a completely unreasonable expectation and a completely unreasonable response to say my childhood was perfect. It couldn't be. You name me any profession or any pursuit in life where people had absolutely no experience doing it, even if they sat and watched others and they could do it without making a mistake. There's countless people who've sat on the sidelines watching, football players, quarterbacks, sat there watching. Could they walk in and be brilliant? No, they still screwed up. We all screw up. So if you or someone you know feels they've had a perfect childhood, that's a huge red flag, especially if you're dating and somebody says that. That's a huge red flag. This person is completely detached from the trauma they've suffered. So keep an eye out for that. Okay, so is it a daily reprieve? Yes. Every day is progress. I get up every day. Part of what I do is I stand on my deck. I do my podcast at home. I have an upper deck, and I stand there with my arms open. I'm like, something's coming today. Something. I don't know what it is, but I'm open to it, whatever it is. And to me, nothing that ever happens is bad. So I don't even use that word. Like if, I don't know, a client fires me, I lose a speech, whatever. In my experience, every so-called bad experience is a gift. But see, everyone loves the victim status, so they roll in, oh, they broke up with me. Oh, they died. Oh, I didn't get this. Oh, I didn't get that. Wait a minute. I don't care what the situation is, no matter how tragic, when you ask the right question, you're going to see there's a gift in it. That's why it happened. But no one's taught us how to look for that gift. And so that's what I do. The second, what most people would call something bad happens, the first question I do is, okay, pay attention. There's a gift here. Where is it? Like I still feel like when my parents died, I cried and felt all that. And that's normal and healthy. But even while experiencing all those heavy emotions, I was asking myself, where's the opportunity here? What's the lesson here? What's the gift? You know, and there are tons of them. Like, for instance, Janice loves my facial expressions. If you're listening on Spreaker or iHeartRadio, you're going to have to add me on Facebook. I guess I give great facial expressions. But one of the things I realized when my dad died is I'm free. See, my dad never liked the things I believed and talked about. And so I knew that I would have released my book even if my dad was alive. But I know it would have been hard for him because he would have seen things in himself that he never wanted to address. But with him dying, I'm not going to give it away, but the final story in the book is very profound, and it really couldn't have been written if my dad wasn't dying, you know? So his death showed me some pieces to this cycle that I couldn't have found. So while I'm heartbroken, my dad died, where's the problem? But see, you have to learn how to shift out of that worst day cycle, the self-abuse, self-victimization, denial aspect that we're all caught in, and learn how to fire the best day cycle, these new neural pathways, so you can start walking in your greatness. And that's really how I ended my book, is for the first time in my life, I'm walking in my greatness. I have no clue what that looks like. I don't have an emotional marker for this. Every day is new to me. I'm creating that new neural pathway. It's scary, but I already know the other way almost killed me. And I see on a daily basis, it's killing everybody else, whether they recognize it or not. It's there. They're just in denial, in massive denial is the biggest killer. And so every day is a new experience for me to learn how to fire those chemicals and accept myself for where I am now. So yes, I went through a divorce and the loss of both of my parents in a 2.5-year span. That's a boatload of trauma. But look where it brought me. Where's the problem? So I guess I'd encourage you to look at that in your life, whether it's a relationship, whether it's your career, whatever it is you're going through. Ask yourself that. Instead of focusing on the self-victimization and the victimhood, turn the question around. Where's the gift? Where's the opportunity? What am I missing here? What could I look at and see differently if I were open to it? And that'll start the process of your journey to success and your journey to your greatness. All right, I'm going to end it there. Thank you, everyone, for watching. Janice, Marianne, Lisa, and everybody else. I can't go through. It's too big to list. I really appreciate it. And thank you for the questions and comments. I love that. It looks like, yeah, Lisa, you really appreciated that response. I'm glad that helped you to realize we're not afraid of failing. We're scared to death of success. So have a great night, everyone. Remember, as I like to say, judgment. We always judge other people, especially negatively, but we judge them because all we're seeing is ourselves. Well, that works the other way too. Remember, when you see greatness in somebody else, all you're ever seeing is your greatness. Don't forget that. Let that in. If you're looking for more solutions to anything I talked about or anything going on in your life, please pick up my book, Your Journey to Success. It's available on Amazon in all formats, whether that's Kindle, paperback, or Audible, whatever works for you. Finally, I've started something called the Greatness Movement, and they are groups where I walk through everything that's in my book, the worst day cycle, which everybody's caught in. If any part of your life isn't where you want it to be, it's because of this, and it talks about things you won't find any other speaker, author, therapist, coach, anybody talking about. It's the solution to walking your greatness. I do those locally Wednesday nights. So please send me an email. I will give you all the details. They only meet once a month. Very easy to do. They meet in my office. They're only, right now, it's only said we're running a promotion. It's only $79 a month. So everyone can afford it. Everyone has that time. If you live out of state, we have a waiting list for the next online group. So get in touch with me. We can add you to the waiting list. I like 8 to 10 people. It's a great number for interaction. So until I get that number, I don't start a group because you need that community. Also, I do private coaching. So if there's something you want to work on with me, work with me individually, just reach out. You can get to me at my email, kenny@coachkennyweiss.com, or just call me, 480-729-3270. Anyway, have a great night, everyone. Thanks for watching. I really appreciate it. And we will see you next Sunday night. Oh, yes. If there's a topic you want covered, email me, private message me, whatever. Whatever I can do to help you. Have a great night, you guys.
I can do anything. I can reach any goal today. I can do what I want. I can be what I want to be.
Coach on Fire Radio.